Hi, this is Matt Heafy from Trivium. I played my 8th grade talent show when I was about 11 years old, maybe 11 or 12 years old, and the song I played was No Leaf Clover by Metallica off the S&M record. At the time, the original singer of Trivium was there at the show. I was friends with his little sister who was in my grade, and he was about 3 or 4 grades above me in high school when I was in 8th grade. They saw me play after the show. He said, hey, I'm putting a band together, and we just lost our guitar player. We're holding tryouts if you'd like to try out. So in about a week or so, I tried out. My tryout song was For Whom the Bell Tolls, another Metallica song. I remember when I first walked in, the other 2 out of the 3 guys that were there were looking at me like, who the hell is this 12-year-old kid, and why would we ever let a 12-year-old in our band? Because these are like 16, 17-year-olds. I played the song perfectly, and they went from one sort of astonishment to the other, let me in the band. The original singer left the band after about 2 months or so, due to musical differences. He wanted the band to be more of like an industrial band, kind of like Rammstein, Skinny Puppy, early Manson, and we wanted to be a metal band. So we couldn't find a singer, and it was actually Travis who was the one that said, you're gonna sing now. And I said, I can't sing. He's like, you're gonna sing. So I sang. So that's how it started. For the first 2 months of being in the band, I was just guitar. 2 or 4 months, or however long it was. Yeah, I was just lead guitar. We couldn't find a singer, so I tried to sing. Being 13, 14, when your voice is massively changing at that point, singing wasn't really easy. And oddly, my voice wasn't very high. It was super low, so I couldn't really sing high at all. So it was just very low, weird singing that didn't sound very good. And it's the only thing I was capable of doing was screaming, and that's why I started screaming in the first place, because I had to be the lead singer of the band. I couldn't figure out how to sing, so I started listening to bands that were screaming, and I was like, oh, I can do this instead. So I started screaming. And gradually over the years, I kept adding more and more singing because that's originally what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to have a massive vocal range, and I just didn't have it as a kid. So over the years, I kept adding more and more singing and more and more singing. And some records we've had 50-50 scream sing, some 100% singing, some 95% screaming. And over the years, I just keep working on it. It's a craft, and you can constantly get better. And recently, I've been training with Matt from Avenged, his vocal coach, Ron Anderson. So I've been working with him, and recently I found out that I've got another 3 to 4 octaves in my range that I never knew I had. So you can always get better. Everything you do in life, you can always get better with more training. Nowadays, it's every single day for singing. Ever since I started training with Ron and talking to Matt, what he does, I mean, he sings every single day. On days off, I believe he's like 30 to 45 minutes at least of singing. And Ron said you should be able to sing about 4 hours healthily and safely a day. So on an average show day, 3 hours before the show, which will be 3:25 coming up soon, I'll do my warm-up, which takes about an hour. It's an hour of warm-ups. I don't speak again till about 30 minutes before the show. Do another 15 to 30 minutes of vocal warm-ups again. Do the 30-minute set of Mayhem, and then a 30-minute cool down. So it's 2.5 hours a day I'm doing. And yesterday I sang about 40, 45 minutes just to keep it up. As a kid, I always did karate, because that's what Japanese kids do. I'm half Japanese, so it was video games and karate and then guitar and anime. So I started with karate, and I've always been really into martial arts. I kind of fell out of it for a long time. I competed as a kid, but like little, in karate. My dad always would take me to like UFC pay-per-view events when it first started. I'm talking like 1 through 15 kind of UFC stuff. He would take me to those things when I was really little, so it's kind of ingrained in me then. When we did Vengeance Falls with David, he always had UFC playing, so we'd watch it. That'd be like our break from recording. We'd all go watch UFC together, and I started really getting interested in it because David would start calling out the positions, what they were, talking about these things. So I never really knew what was going on the ground, and he started saying what they were, and I was like, wow, there's specific things going on here. We toured Brazil. That's kind of loud. We toured Brazil for the very first time, and I loved the country so much, I decided I want to do what Brazilians do. A fan gave me a Brazilian cookbook. I went home and started making their traditional food like feijoada and stuff like that, and started making caipirinhas. And then I wanted to do what else they did, and I found that's either soccer or jiu-jitsu. I'd never really wanted to play soccer, but I wanted to do what was harder of the two, so I decided jiu-jitsu. So I joined kind of late. I joined about 16 months ago, Gracie Baja Orlando, and Zoltan from Five Finger actually found me my gym. He said, hey, you should check this place out and go here. So I joined, and when I'm home, it's 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. When I'm on the road, it's on a bad week, 2 times a week, on a good week, 5 times a week. Today was a bad day. Today I didn't get to do it, which sucks. I'm obviously addicted. I love it. It's my favorite thing outside of music and food, and it's a good home. I found a couple here and there. I've trained with Herman Lee. I've trained with Five Finger security guard John Simons a lot. He's one of my coaches, Professor John Simons out of his gym. And so I've worked with him quite a bit. And this tour, I've been able to work with Andre the Diva Tiva. He's a pro Bellator MMA fighter. He's a good friend of mine, Trivium supporter, used in waves for his walkout music a lot. So I had 2.5 hour days with him on this tour. And Eric Ramsey out of George Gurgel's gym in Cincinnati. He came out and trained me for a little bit, one of his black belts. So anyone I can find who's a friend, who I know that, you know, we can work techniques and then roll a bit, I'll work with. And I'm teaching 3 of my guys. I'm teaching Matt, our drummer, our sound guy Joey, and our guitar tech Jeremy. I'm still very new to this. I just got my blue belt under Gustavo Muggiotti, and it's like singing. It's like I was talking about singing. You can find out you can keep getting better, but it's all about mat time. It's all about putting that time in. In the USA, we've got 10 by 10 mats that USA, North America, USA, Canada. So we've got 10 by 10 mats out here, and then 10 by 10 mats in Europe. We travel with 4 to 6 gis at any given time. We also have a bunch of Muay Thai gear. But I started Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu at the same time, but I realized I can either kind of get good at both at the same time or really dedicate myself to one thing and get great at one thing at a time. And I decided to just really go 100% with Jiu-Jitsu for martial arts. I shoulder the flame and darkness all for me to lay in. A peaceful call. Oh man, I don't think I have what it takes to be an MMA fighter. I would love to give it a shot. Maybe Andre the Diva will show me some cool stuff here and there. But I've definitely noticed from sparring in Muay Thai, getting your nose punched when you're a singer really messes up your singing a lot. You know, head kicks and stuff mess up your singing a lot. Luckily with Jiu-Jitsu, with sparring, you can control the pace. You know, you can tap at any time. If you're in a position you don't like, you can tap. You know, if you're getting submitted, you can tap. But luckily, we've only found a couple things that mess up singing or mess up guitar playing, and we just ban those on the road. Ezekiel chokes with gi we don't do on the road because that's a weak recovery for my voice. Wrist locks we try not to do with guitar players too much, that kind of stuff. So we were able to control the pace a little bit more for what you do professionally. And Herman got me taping my fingers. At first I didn't like it too much for the grips, but I guess now as I'm doing it the proper Jiu-Jitsu taping way where it has the X over the interior knuckle, that helps with grips and it'll prevent my fingers from getting overly broken. But I gotta make sure I can keep doing this so I can pay for my membership. I do about maybe 90% gi, 10% no gi. I actually just rolled with Andre no gi for the first time, and he was the most difficult no gi guy I've ever gone with. I mean, that was me being able to go with a professional MMA fighter no gi, and what he does 95% of the time. And yeah, throw in some elbows in that, I don't know if I can handle that. Right now, I'm just so interested in what Chris Weidman's going to do. You know, Silva, due to the, like for me, when I got back in the UFC, due to the fact that he had mastered so many martial arts, everything from like capoeira to Muay Thai to Jiu-Jitsu, that was so interesting to me to see someone who'd mastered everything. But when Weidman came in, a guy that was, you know, brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu when he came into the UFC, perfect record, a guy with just overall striking, not necessarily like acclamations like a Muay Thai master or something like that, but for a guy that can come in there and just be that amazing, that young, it reminded me of, you know, the way when we started. When we first started, people were like, who are these young kids that don't have anything under their belt and what can they possibly bring? And not comparing, I guess, I'm not comparing ourselves to him, but it felt like the same kind of path. You know, all of a sudden being in the global spotlight, people doubting you and you having to prove yourself. So I really am curious to see what he can do. His last fight was amazing. And we'll just see what happens. I hope he keeps winning, and Ronda's one of my favorites as well. I just saw a video of her like demoing some of all her different judo throws into an arm bar at some mall. I think it's online right now. It's like one of the current videos going around. Her technique is unbelievable. So for me, I really prefer the ground game. I love to see the ground game, but the last Weidman match certainly was one of the more interesting striking matches I've ever seen. As the blood empties from my veins, nothing ever stays the same. I know. just read that this morning. Yeah, I'm stoked. I want to see what happens. You know, I guess people would look at the two and assume because Belfort looks like a superhero, you know, his body is ripped like a superhero, that people would assume that he would have the upper hand. But the thing with martial arts, that's the thing. You know, it was jiu-jitsu was honed in by 120, 130-pound man who people never thought would be able to beat them when they were bigger than him. And martial arts, you can never tell with size, shape. It's all technique. It's all mat time. It's all, you know, whoever has the most, I guess, a little bit of the most time logged on the mat and time logged working techniques, but also sometimes there's a little bit of fate, a little bit of chance, a little bit of your opponent making a mistake or you tricking them into a mistake, and that's the philosophy of jiu-jitsu, you know. Not forcing the technique, but forcing the mistake of your opponent. I don't know, because I mean, I'm one that doesn't use them, and I'm coming into the world very new, so my apologies to anyone that is offended by what I think, and maybe they can teach me better, but I believe that people should have to work for what they do and work for their craft and hone in on their craft naturally. That's what I feel. I've had to learn how to become a decent guitar player and decent singer off fucking up and off messing up and making mistakes and not having an aid. I didn't have the Game Genie plug-in on my SNES cartridge of life to make this happen. So that's how I feel about it. I mean, people were really bummed out about it in the major league sports, and MMA, I hope, becomes as big as a lot of our other national sports that we have in North America or in the world, and it's getting there. I know it's still a fraction as big as boxing is, but I hope it becomes that big. And I guess substances are always, I don't know, for me, if it's the easier route, it shouldn't be taken. You should have to take the hard road to get somewhere. There's differing levels of censorship all over the world. You can see like drinking ages are different everywhere. I feel like our drinking age in the States is too high. What's yours? 21? 19? I feel like when it's something like 21 in the States, it forces people to think it's so taboo, so they really, really want to get it. So when they're 15, 16, they find out they have that much more to go. They binge drink in secret instead of if it were like 16, 17, 18, like it is in major parts of Europe, where it's just this kind of accepted things like, yeah, it's all good. Here's a little bit. Don't go nuts. I think it's in doses, you know, in moderation of doses of alcohol and non-illegal substances, it's a little bit safer, so people don't go nuts when they have to do it behind closed doors and do it secretly. I think maybe a level of MMA can be too much for 8 to 12-year-olds to see when it gets that gory. But if you explain the history behind it, I think if it's taught not just, hey, this is this, you know, because a lot of people think it's just this barbaric sport, but when people can recognize the history behind it, recognize that these things, especially a martial art like jiu-jitsu, how it started off as an ancient samurai art, when the samurai is downed off his horse and has no weapon left, this is what he had to use. He had to use the style of ancient Japanese jiu-jitsu to finish his opponent with no weapons. And then how it graduated and how it evolved to early forms of Japanese jiu-jitsu where it became a little more practicable, a little bit more sparable, then created judo, and then created back to jiu-jitsu, then brought to Brazil and became Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think when people are presented that and they're able to learn the history behind everything, it shows that there's so much more to it than just brute strength, and that there is an art to everything that's going on. It's not just dudes bar brawling each other. There is a very subtle art going on. At the professional level, there is a level of professionality that has to take place, people that have to qualify for things that have to be found out. Sometimes there is that, you know, bar brawler kind of kid that probably makes it into it and creates their own style, but I guess it's as much as musicians are considered artists or chefs are considered artists, I feel like those three professions are all kind of in the same realm. Martial artists, musicians, and chefs all kind of fall within the same terminology because we're not really licensed and certified. I'm not a licensed artist or musician. I'm just a guy that plays guitar and sings, and people call us artists. And I guess it's the same thing for fighters. You know, when I was talking to Andre Tiva, we were saying that our lives are so similar with our day-to-day and how we always have to hone in on this craft and how we're looked at and how people, you know, look up to us and has a responsibility in that. So perhaps.
The calamity grows and the darkness leads to disarray. Guilt buries me alive.
Emotions come into play in everything. Same thing with those, back to those three worlds of martial artists, musicians, and chefs. We've had weird run-ins like that. We've felt like that at times. You know, other bands have felt offended with what we've done, and we felt offended with other bands or with what we've done within our own band. And that's how you have to hash things out sometimes. It's not always going to be pro and PC. Same thing with, I don't really follow football too well, so I'm not going to remember the guy's name. Corey will know. But the football player at the Super Bowl who, or was it the Super Bowl? He got really into it, said something kind of heated in an interview. What was his name? Sorry for my ignorance. The only sport I know is MMA. So, but yeah, that really offended people. People are like, well, this is a professional thing. He shouldn't have spoken like that. He should have really watched his words. And it's like, guys, with what musicians and athletes and what chefs have to do working at these high adrenaline, high-paced lifestyles, if you catch us at a moment like that, try to catch a musician within a couple seconds coming off stage, you're not going to get a PC answer. You might get it maybe 30 minutes or an hour afterwards, but I felt like that statement was perfectly verified. And again, sorry, I don't know his name. Hey, Corey, what was the name of the football player everyone got mad about when he was all heated when he said something on the news? Richard Sherman, there we go, thanks. I knew you'd know, he's the NFL guy. But yeah, so I didn't feel like he was out of line. I felt like if you catch a guy and try to get an interview after they've had to work their asses off physically and just get in the zone like that, to have to come back down from that high, it's difficult. So yeah, I forgot where the beginning of the origination of that question came from, but I guess I had a point.
I found the strife.